Close your eyes for a moment and picture the Himalayas. It's towering mountains, freezing winds, icy rivers cutting through deep valleys. But if you look beyond the snow and silence, you will see something else: soldiers marching, watchtowers scanning the horizon, and the heavy tension of two of the world's biggest powers staring at each other across a line that is not even clearly marked on the map. This is the line of actual control, the fragile border between India and China. And here, the story of geopolitics is written not with pens, but with stones, with blood, and now with railway tracks. Today we talk about why India's decision to spend more than $3.4 billion on new railway lines near the China border is not just about transport, not just about development, but about survival, deterrence, and power. And we will see why Beijing is worried, why Washington is watching, and why every Indian should understand what a train running in the mountains really means for the future of Asia. For decades, China has had the upper hand in this region. They built highways in Tibet, railways connecting Lhasa to the Chinese heartland, and even tunnels and airstrips at dizzying altitudes. Their soldiers could be reinforced quickly, their supplies delivered faster, their tanks rolled in with less effort. On the Indian side, things looked different. Long, narrow mountain roads twisted and turned for hundreds of kilometers. Landslides, snow, and extreme weather often cut off entire areas. Moving a single battalion of soldiers sometimes took days, not hours. The imbalance was clear, and it became brutally obvious in the summer of 2020, when Indian and Chinese soldiers clashed in the Galwan Valley. 20 brave Indian soldiers were martyred, and the entire nation felt the shock. It was a reminder that slogans, speeches, and agreements are not enough when facing an aggressive neighbor. Infrastructure is destiny. If you cannot reach the battlefield, you cannot defend it. You cannot move supplies, you cannot survive. That was the lesson. And that is why India is now racing to lay down railway tracks that will pierce through the Himalayas and bring New Delhi's power closer to the border. Think about the psychology of this. For a villager living in Arunachal Pradesh, the arrival of a railway line is not just about faster travel. It is about feeling connected, feeling protected, feeling seen by the rest of the nation. For a soldier deployed in Ladakh, knowing that reinforcements and supplies can come by rail gives a sense of strength and confidence. For a rival across the border, seeing tracks being laid, tunnels being dug, stations being built, sends a message. India is not retreating. India is here to stay, and India is ready. But what exactly is being built? Let's break it down. India has announced new railway lines in strategically critical regions, linking the fertile plains with high altitude. Military bases, cutting travel times by days, and allowing massive quantities of men and material to be transported swiftly. Trains that can carry thousands of soldiers or heavy artillery in one go are far more efficient than convoys of trucks struggling up narrow passes. These projects are not glamorous metro systems in big cities. These are lifelines of national security. And their cost $3.4 billion is not an expense. It is an investment in sovereignty. China knows this. And that is why Beijing is nervous. Because for years, Chinese analysts could boast that their infrastructure gave them the edge in any confrontation along the border. Now, that comfort is fading. India is closing the gap. The railway tracks may take years to complete, but the signal is already clear. India is not accepting permanent disadvantage. And here's where geopolitics comes in. United States, Japan, and Australia, India's partners in the Quad, are watching closely. They may not say it loudly, but they know that every kilometer of railway track near the Himalayas strengthens not just India, but the entire strategy to contain Chinese expansion. The Himalayas are not just a local issue. They are part of the wider chessboard of the Indo-Pacific. If India can hold its ground on the roof of the world, it can also project confidence in the Indian Ocean, in the South China Sea, and in every negotiation where China tries to push its weight. But let us not oversimplify. Building railways in the Himalayas is no easy feat. Engineers face avalanches, earthquakes, and sheer vertical cliffs. Tunnels have to be blasted through rock at altitudes where oxygen is thin. Costs spiral, deadlines stretch. Yet, despite all these challenges, the projects continue. Because the price of delay is not just financial, it is strategic. Now, let me bring you into a story. Imagine it is 2027. A sudden border crisis erupts in Arunachal Pradesh. Chinese patrols cross the line. Indian soldiers rush to confront them. In the past, reinforcements might have taken days. But this time, within hours, a train pulls into a station just 50 kilometers from the border. Hundreds of soldiers disembark. Equipment rolls out. Supplies are unloaded. The message is immediate and undeniable. India is ready. Escalation will not succeed. This is not a fantasy. This is exactly what these railways are designed for. And the benefits go beyond defense. Once tracks are laid, trade grows, tourism develops, local economies boom. What was once remote and vulnerable becomes connected and prosperous. This is how infrastructure shapes destiny. And that is why the new railways are not just a military project, but a nation-building project. Of course, China will not sit idle. Already, their state media warns about Indian provocations. Their military planners will look for countermeasures, more troops, more bases, more aggressive patrolling. Tensions could rise. But here's the truth. Peace through weakness is temporary. Peace through strength lasts longer. By building these railways, India is not seeking war. India is seeking deterrence. The message is, we are strong enough that you will think twice before trying to change the status quo. We must also see how this connects to the larger Indian strategy. At sea, India is expanding its navy to counter Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean. In technology, India is working with the US and Europe to secure supply chains. In energy, India is buying oil from Russia to keep costs low and growth steady. And on land, in the Himalayas, India is building railways. All these pieces are connected. Together, they form a grand strategy of resilience, independence, and readiness. So, why do I say these railways change everything? Because they shift the psychology of the border. For decades, the narrative was that China had the upper hand in infrastructure. That gave them confidence and sometimes arrogance. Now, India is saying, we will match you, we will meet you, we will not be left behind. And that changes the calculation in Beijing. As I near the end of this speech, I want you to reflect on one thing. Geopolitics is often talked about in terms of missiles, alliances, treaties. But sometimes the real game changers are quieter. A railway track laid across a valley. A tunnel drilled through a mountain. A station built in a forgotten village. These are the things that decide whether a soldier feels supported, whether a villager feels secure, whether a rival feels cautious. And that is why this $3.4 billion investment is not just another budget line, it is history in the making. The Himalayas are eternal, but the balance of power is not. It shifts, it tilts, it responds to human will. Today, India is showing that will. The railways will take years, but the message is already delivered. To China, it says, the days of easy advantage are over. To the world, it says, India is ready to rise. And to every Indian, it says, the tracks we lay today will carry the weight of our sovereignty tomorrow. And so, the next time you hear the whistle of a train echoing through the mountains of Ladakh or Arunachal, remember it is not just the sound of transport. It is the sound of strength, of resolve, of a nation determined to defend its borders and shape its destiny. The clash of nations may continue, but the clash of willpower is already being decided. And in that contest, these railways change everything.